Sam, I was paged last night. Page came from your dad's office at the arcade. The number's been disconnected for 20 years.
Alan, you're acting like I'm gonna find him sitting there working.
The son of Flynn from the original goes back into the game and finds his father. ... For us, what it was about was taking the sounds and the ideas from the original movie and letting that evolve and become something new.
We certainly wanted to make it fun, we wanted to make it exciting, and we wanted to make it different.
The initial teaser that we did was for Comic-Con, and I think a big part of that was a test to see how Tron would play as an updated version or sequel to the previous one. Working with Joe Kosinski, he hadn't directed a movie before, but he had all kinds of experience with this type of animation and this type of computer-generated world. So I did all the sound design for the initial teaser. And this one, they didn't even announce what it was. Nobody knew what movie this was for. It was a few minutes long, and about halfway through, I think people started to figure it out. And then when they saw Jeff Bridges, the whole place lost it.
It's just a game! Not anymore.
So I think at that point we all knew it was game on.
We're on the grid. We call it the grid, and it's the inside of your computer. It's definitely not the inside of your computer that you would expect.
It's kind of gray and rainy in there, which is kind of, you wouldn't necessarily imagine the inside of a computer to be gray and rainy. It was kind of gray and rainy.
Sam is experiencing all this almost as the audience member, and so when you're on the bike with him, it's got to be as exciting and as thrilling and as breathtaking as it is for Sam. And the same thing when he's in the other environment, the safe house, which is a quiet, what would be residential, but there's something kind of uncomfortable and haunting about it that's there just to remind you that it's not the most comfortable environment, at least for Sam.
Long time. You have no idea.
Mirroring complete, disk activated and synchronized, proceed to games.
But we did do a lot of processing of the voices, so depending on how high you are in the hierarchy of being closer to human, you'd have more or less processing on your voice, and sometimes you can barely tell it's there, and sometimes you can really tell a lot.
What am I supposed to do?
Survive.
The director wanted to experiment as much as possible. He knew kind of what he wanted, but he also wanted to try as many things as he could, and as the music came in, which was really great, we just kept playing and playing, and everybody kept stepping up, and they would say, we're going to go till midnight tonight. We just were like, all right, midnight it is.
He was definitely very involved. He had really definite ideas. The definite ideas would change a lot, but he was always very clear about what he was asking for at the time. So he was great.
He understands that there has to be different layers of structure to everything, and I think he's able to dissect it that way too. He can say, okay, look, the engine element of this is right, but there's something about the whine that we can just layer just something else on top to get it to be just exactly what I'm looking for. He can dissect it that way. It's helpful to have that kind of direction.
The first pass of stuff that I did was very synthetic. I was kind of thinking in terms of video games, and Joe was thinking in terms of video games, but we were sort of still stuck in the mindset of the original Tron, trying to kind of update that type of sound. But I started adding bits of Ducati motorcycle buys and things like that to the synthetic stuff, and it gave it this grit and this weight that the more I added, the more kind of aggressive it became. And so I kind of changed the tack and went more for using real motorcycle sounds that had been completely manipulated and processed. So in a Doppler buy, for example, the pitch starts way higher than it ordinarily would and pitches way lower than it ordinarily would. And then I would do filter sweeps on them and all kinds of processing to them to give them a more synthetic kind of a feel. I made an effort in the teaser especially not to look at the original. I knew that we were going to want to reference the original at some point, but it looks different. It should sound different, even though there were recognizers and there were light bikes and there were like jets and things like that. And they had a similar-ish look. They're really pretty different. I always felt that it was better to kind of reinvent a new world, and then you can throw in things for the fans and for people that want to look back and go, oh yeah, that's right. And that's kind of the approach we ended up taking for the whole movie.
I think that Daft Punk rose to the occasion. They integrated a lot of their true raw elements of who they are and also embrace the orchestra and what the orchestra could do to help them. They were guided by Joe, but they also brought in their edge, and I think that they nailed it. The discussions that we had early on was that we didn't want to abuse 7-1, especially with the music. We never wanted this to be a gimmick. We wanted it to have a substantial role in the movie, and we never wanted it to become silly, or we never wanted it to be distracting. That said, there are several moments where we would take what was designed to be in the front speakers, we would shift to the back, and sometimes we were able to help the music maintain its presence by getting it off the screen a little bit more. I believe that it helps us sell the size of different spaces. We're in the arena for a variety of scenes, and it's helpful to understand how big the space is by the amount of delays and slaps and repeats. To go to the other side of the spectrum, we were able to take a quiet environment and we could do things with ambiances, keeping discrete ambiances and discrete speakers and discrete reverbs, especially on dialogue. When you do have an intimate scene, you can have a very different verb in the front than you do in the sides, than you do in the back, that can really help to sell a very different environment. All helpful emotionally to what Joe was trying to accomplish.
This is his sector. Make it there alive, and he'll find you.
Our production dialogue certainly had lots of challenges, and it took a true sense of teamwork to achieve the outcome that we have.
They all had practical lights in their suits, and they all had this migraine-inducing whine to them. So when we got it, the long-suffering dialogue editors cut it without anything on it, and then we sent it to Marie Ebbing, who did a Nova process on it, which is a very specific, taking out certain frequencies to it. And then we pre-mixed it, and Gary did another cleanup pass on it, and then when in the final we did another cleanup pass on it. So the fact that any of that production is usable is a miracle, and a lot of it actually was usable. There's a couple scenes that are completely ADR, and I don't think you'd know. Garrett Hedlund loves ADR. He came in and he would actually tell people on the set, I can't wait to do ADR, I can't wait to do ADR, which is really, really, really rare. And I think he kind of infected Olivia Wilde, made her feel better about it too.
So between good performances from ADR and a great team effort on the production side of things, and all guided by Joe's direction, I think we came out with a dialogue track that's pretty solid.
Where are you taking me?
Patience, Sam Flynn. All your questions will be answered soon.
Collaborating with people and going off in different tangents and experimenting like we did on Tron, to me, it's the best way to go.
That by far is my favorite part, the teamwork that went into this track.
I just like getting locked away in a dark room and just letting the scene come to life.
It's not about the tools of what we do, it's about the outcome, the emotional quotient, all in the efforts of achieving the story.